The United States House Subcommittee on Africa held a public hearing to examine President Donald Trump's recent decision to place Nigeria back on the list of countries of particular concern. Now, this main focus was to understand why Nigeria was redesignated and what the consequences might be for both countries. We have more in this report.
The designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern by the U.S. President Donald Trump triggered diverse emotions in many citizens, some afraid, others fulfilled. Many of the population were left confused with questions of what next on their lips. About 3 weeks after, this session in the U.S. Congress may have given perspective to what the concerns are.
It's unacceptable in a free and democratic society to have laws, period. They are not only imposing on somebody's free speech, imposing on their right to practice their own religion freely. And when blasphemy laws are used as a tool mob, or bandits, whatever you want to call them, to attack Christians, it shows the laws are a problem per se. It's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons why it opposes these laws, and it's one of the reasons why Nigeria is on the CPC list, because these Sharia laws are being used as a bludgeon against Christians oftentimes.
The Nigerian Constitution prohibits the ownership of firearms. But somehow, Fulani militants operating in the middle belt of region of the country armed. And we're not talking about ISIS, we're not talking about Boko Haram. Why hasn't there been some type of move or campaign by the Nigerian government to disarm these militants that are operating there, where we're seeing a lot of this killing that is access to AK-47s and other small arms to slaughter Christians, is then that you've been talking to the Nigerian government about, because I think it would actually have a serious impact, and I raised with the Nigerian government officials when we met with them.
The Nigerian government lacks the means to protect community groups that kill indiscriminately. To be clear, this does not abdicate the Nigerian from responsibility. A government's duty is to protect its people, and when there's a failure to do so, neglect or corruption or governance, leaders must be held accountable. Capacity within Nigerian institutions maintain peace is a real question. We should be asking what the U.S. is doing to help Nigeria build that capacity. Are we offering real partnerships or just threatening airstrikes and sanctions? Instead, are we thinking about technical support, training, and investment in the institutions that prevent violence in the
Some participants highlighted the complex nature of the issue as being beyond religion. They cautioned against a one-sided narrative and proposed a broader approach to finding a resolution to numerous conflicts.
There are conflicts that are specifically driven by religion. And there are some other conflicts that may have specific drivers. Where the challenge is now, or where the problem is when everything is lumped in together. You know, working for several years in the Middle Belt, when a conflict breaks out and people say, oh, it's a farmer-headed conflict, it's a farmer-headed conflict. Now, every type of conflict in the Middle Belt becomes a farmer-headed conflict. But we need to take the time and take the step to actually identify which of these conflicts are driven specifically because of disputes between farmers and herders, and then which of these conflicts are just plain old criminality, as some of them are, and then which of those conflicts are actually driven because people might be targeted because of their faith. And I think this is where we miss the point when we do not acknowledge the complexities within Nigeria, when we use a single story to define the conflict. This is why we've not been able to find viable solutions.
Nigeria wants and needs the United States. And I think that many Nigerians have come to this country and continue to come to this country for education, for investment reasons, or to live. And they are among our most successful, if not the most successful immigrant group. So I think that they have a lot to gain, and they know that from a relationship with the United States. I think I'm encouraged that the Nigerian government has an extremely high-level delegation over here talking to the Trump administration about how to improve relations.
If anything is missed through the whole session, it will not be the urgent need for the government to rise and take decisive action and address the different levels of insecurity in the country. The Nigerian government is urged to purge the institutions of entanglements that contradict the very responsibility of government.
Joining us now to discuss Nigeria's redesignation as a country of particular concern is Ambassador Joe Keshi, former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He joins us via Zoom, and also I'm joined by Temitope Olodo, a security consultant and analyst, also joining us via Zoom. Gentlemen, it's good to have you join us at this time.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with you, Temitope. For a lot of people who were able to follow that hearing, it seemed like it was a more nuanced process than what some persons were really expecting, because aside to those who were pushing for this designation, there were also some people who, sort of have a more balanced opinion. But let's start with your own impression of how that hearing really went down.
For me, it was an embarrassment. I was not happy that such hearing was happening. We have a National Assembly who, if they've done their due diligence, that Nigerian lady will not be appearing on a Zoom to the United States when she's just around the corner, to Abuja. She will have been in a hearing in Abuja. They will have had her. They will have made their comment, and the Americans' showcase would not have been necessary. But here we are. We have our own citizen being televised on TV, explaining what is happening or what happened to her, and everybody around the world is seeing, our nakedness. I wasn't happy. Of course, I was happy that it was a balanced conversation, but I wasn't happy with the whole charade, because for me, Nigeria could do better. Nigeria has brilliant people, brilliant minds, including one of your guests here, Ambassador, who has been speaking about this issue for quite a long time, but who has called him to have a conversation with him about how things could be improved. They listen, but they do not act. And that is what the team I took away from that conversation yesterday.
All right, let's get Ambassador's opinion. Ambassador, this is not the first time you're raising concern about the incessant killings that we have seen in recent months. Let's get your own opinion as to that hearing yesterday.
Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you. Look, I can't agree more with what you have heard about what transpired yesterday. Like the gentleman, I particularly not just wasn't happy, was embarrassed by the whole exercise. I had said in some other platforms that with the situation which we found ourselves, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria should have spoken to us long ago to rally around support. That is what presidents do when you are in this kind of situation. The National Assembly should have held a hearing, like he said, about the situation to try to find out exactly, what happened and how to make recommendations to the president. But we allowed Washington to do that for us. And I hope Nigerians heard the recurring statements or themes about Nigeria itself. Our institutions were described as ineffective, disorganized, poor leadership. Our country was described as having poor leadership, institutions weak, corruption, lack of political will. You just name it. And these are things we in this country, many of us in this country have been urging the government to try and resolve. And I have repeatedly asked the question, how on earth do anybody in this country explain that for 15 years, we've just been making excuses about something that is apparent to us? We can't even explain what is going on. Nobody has given us an idea. We are just speculating about who the sponsors are. And you remember they actually talked about the fact that the rascals, as somebody called them, you know, nobody has been brought to justice one way or the other. And this thing continues. And in the midst of it all, kidnappings are still going on. The bandits are still operating everywhere. And so when your country is described as incompetent, your institutions weak and ineffective, your leadership doesn't know what they are doing. How do you expect any
some of
true
the
patriot to
statements,
feel?
I'm hoping you can hear me. Some of the statements made by the lady who resided in the Middle Belt, she cited some issues talking about that some attacks are just plain criminality and some are being regarded as former elder clashes. But what I want to really ask you is the U.S. intervening really at this point, is that going to provide an actual end to what we are seeing at the moment?
Madam, as we like to say, you can't expect the United States to come and solve your problems. You can't. We have a government, for goodness sake. We have leaders in this country, for goodness sake. They have the responsibility to solve this problem. And if they need foreign assistance, they can ask for it. We shouldn't pass our headache to others. If we want the United States to come and take over and then solve our problems, we could as well just say to them, come back. I mean, you have never been a colonizer of this country. Come and recolonize us. Can you imagine that the lady you are speaking of, in fact, in one of the recommendations she made, in fact, the first recommendation she made was to say that Nigeria should be encouraged or something along that line to appoint an ambassador in Washington. It is something routine that we've been saying for the last 2 years. Everywhere in the world, the first job of a president is to name his envoys. Now, Washington has to now come back and begin to tell you to appoint your ambassadors. Washington now has to tell you about the state of your institutions. You want Washington to come and take over your military to help you fight your wars and to help you reorganize your justice system so that you can have the courage to go after the sponsors and deal with the sponsors. Come on, my lady, we should all be ashamed of ourselves.
Ambassador, I understand that, you know, there has been a delegate who are going to be, you know, visiting Washington back and forth to ensure that, you know, this situation comes to an end. But I'll put you on hold for a moment. I just want to get Temitope's opinion. At the U.S. hearing, there were claims that about, you know, 52,000, you know, Christians were killed since 2009. From your own view, this designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, do you think this is fair? Does this paint a misleading picture of the country? Temitope, I'm hoping you can hear me. I was asking you about some of the statements made at the hearing yesterday in terms of, you know, deaths of Christians killed in Nigeria since 2009. Yeah. Your own view, designating Nigeria as a country of particular concern, does it seem like this is fair to the government? Does this paint a misleading picture of our security situation at the moment?
I think if you ask majority of Nigerians as we speak, many of them know that this challenge is just like your previous guest has mentioned, did not start under this administration. So, but this administration has inherited the baggage. The issue here is if you don't name your statistics, if you don't have your statistics, others will label it for you. And that is exactly what is happening. And I was listening to you earlier talking about the delegates that went to Washington. You know, it's laughable because I worked in the civil service. I'm just informally in the civil service, just like the ambassador. And we know that these people have already mentioned the dates they're going to have their hearing, and you are going in the newspaper to say you're going to Washington. You were not there. They need to return our money back because it's taxpayers' money that they've wasted. If they've gone through the proper diplomatic channels, they will have known that them themselves being executive going there is just more or less embarrassing themselves. It could have been the National Assembly engaging with their partners in the United States to say, oh, you're having this hearing, we would like to give you some of our views, give you some statistics, give you some documentation. These guys were rolling out data, and we can't challenge their data because we can't say, no, you said 52,000, it's not 52,000, it is this. Because we don't even have the data, and if we have the data, we don't release it on time. We're always holding information. People do not hold this kind of information. If, when this incident happened, that lady that appeared on TV was taken up by the Nigerian government or the state government, which also shares the blame, taking care of, address, giving psychological support for losing her child. If she appears live yesterday, we will have seen the difference in the way she talks and what she says. She will have said, oh, this incident happened, but the Nigerian government have been very supportive to me. And the same thing we complain about the Chibok girls. Most of their parents died in agony. No support for them. When are we going to stop this? And this is sad that
this conversation, I'm hoping you can hear me. This is, sad that this conversation is coming at a time where more recently we had another abduction of a student in Niger. And the question really is if the United States will provide a lasting solution, as some persons are expecting. But you saw the delegation that the Nigerian government really put out yesterday. Despite criticism, some say the Nigerian government is not doing enough. I want to ask you what you think may have led us to this point. Is it a lack of hands in terms of security, resources, infrastructure? What exactly brought us to this point? Because this is an issue that has been occurring even in the past administration.
I think what led us to this situation is our lack of understanding of how things should be dealt with properly. In terms of security management, we've not been doing it the way it should have been done. I think we need to change gear. I think we need to work with our partners to try and address those issues. I also believe that when you look at what happened today that you mentioned, the Niger State, the distance between Niger and Abuja is not that far. A military jet will get there in less than 10 minutes, showing a sign of force that will make those people know that the Nigerians care about their citizens. But nothing like that happened. We have 3 or 4 helicopters in Abuja. All of them are sitting down there, but if they're having one bed, they'll be able to take those helicopters there. Did any of those helicopters move? That's what our National Assembly should be asking. We're giving you this money. What are you doing with the money? With regard to the delegates, yeah, fair enough, you have heavy people there, but I didn't see any legislative arm involved. These are people that know how to engage those kind of people. I'm hoping that we will see pictures of the kind of engagement they've done since yesterday or to today. And I'm hoping, like every other Nigerian, that America do not need to come and do our job for us. We have sufficient people that can do the work and do it even better than the Americans can do it.
I mean, like what the ambassador also mentioned, talking about the fact that we may not necessarily need the U.S., to intervene in our matters if we can address it. But let's take the ball back to the ambassador. Ambassador, Congressman John James linked religious persecution in the country to political repression. He also cited Nnamdi Kanu's detention, which also, coincidentally clashed with the time of his judgment. Many Nigerians feel that this may have politicized some of the religious issues that we are seeing on ground. How is it expected that the U.S. government, Nigeria, also separate human rights concerns from internal political matters? Ambassador, I'm hoping you got that question.
Sorry, can you come again? I'm actually struggling to hear you very well. Please,
right, I was asking you about the fact that in Congress yesterday, we had Congressman John James linking religious persecution to political repression in Nigeria. He cited Nnamdi Kanu's detention, which, also coincided with the time of his judgment yesterday. And, many Nigerians feel that this is, sort of going away from the issue on ground, rather politicizing religious concerns. How is it expected that the U.S. government, Nigeria government also separate human rights concerns from internal, matters?
No, I don't think you are right to say many Nigerians. You know, this is how we say things without even having the data to defend what we do say. Listen, let me just be very frank with you. And I've said it on other platforms. We do not live in a vacuum or in a world of isolation. I've said this many times, and I'll repeat it on your TVC here, that when I joined the service, it was fashionable to describe a diplomat as one who goes abroad to lie on behalf of his country. You cannot do that today. And if you listen to the chairman of that committee, how many times he told us how long he's been dealing with this issue, you know, of religious persecution and political persecution in Nigeria. He wasn't joking. He even cited the months they've been dealing with this, which means that the Congress of the United States had information. They had documents that they are relying on. They have data before them that they are speaking with. They are not speaking from the blues, you know. And of course, they have political operators on the ground. They have the ambassador. They have the CIA operating from this country, providing them all the information that, you know, they need. So the point is, we just need to get serious about a number of things in this country. This is a very crucial issue. It has lasted for too long. And like they were saying yesterday, it is time we just find a way to resolve this problem. Because if we do not resolve this problem as soon as we can, it's going to eventually consume everybody, whether you like it or not. Because as the hearing was going on in Washington about Christian persecution, Christian schools are being attacked in Nigeria. And of course, they are getting the report. Demonstrations about bring back our girls, they are getting they also, you know, being all over the world. And this goes back to what happened in 2014. Let's not forget that we are back to square one when this happened in 2014. And members of the current government were leading protests, describing President Jonathan, for example, as clueless. Should we also say that they too are now clueless? Because the problem they created in 2014, 2015 has escalated. Buhari came in with the hope and the promise to resolve the insecurity situation. He has compounded it. And now Tinubu has inherited it. So Tinubu has an obligation because he cannot exonerate himself from the problem. So Tinubu has an obligation to do his best to end this crisis, to end insecurity. And if he has the courage, if he can sum up the political will that they said is lacking, if he can sum up the political will and deal with the core issues. Look, where do these arms come from? Oh, everybody says from Libya. How many years ago from Libya? The drones that are reportedly now being used by Boko Haram, are they coming from Libya? And how on earth do we make this excuse that these arms are coming from Libya? We are not neighbors. We do not share border with Libya. So you begin to ask, and this is why we were described as incompetent, institutional weakness, that we could not intercept all these arms over the years. Who are the sponsors? Certainly not the people you see on the ground. They are not the ones who finance these things. They are not the ones who are providing the arms and ammunition. Who are the people, for goodness sake, that are providing the arms and ammunition? And where are they coming from? How do they get into Nigeria? When we do not share border with any of these countries we are naming, that all these arms are coming from there. So when you want to be objective, these are the questions you begin to ask yourself. There have been rumors of some of the politicians, particularly some of them in the north, who have been responsible for this thing. They have never been brought to justice. And part of what they were saying yesterday were, even where we know that Christian communities were attacked, they had information that they were going to be attacked. And at the end of the day, nobody was arrested. Nobody has been brought to justice. So the government that has a responsibility, first responsibility, the protection of its citizens. It failed to provide protection for the citizens. It also fails,
Ambassador,
to give justice even to the dead.
We understand that designate, he's been sent to the United States, Washington specifically, to provide an action plan as to what the next step really would be for Nigeria. We are hoping that this get resolved as soon as possible. Like you mentioned, it seems that we are back to the scratch in terms of security. But that's a fine place to leave the conversation for now. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen. Ambassador Joe Keshi, former permanent secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Temitope Olodo, security consultant and analyst. Thank you for joining us on board now.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.